You are living in the most dangerous time in American history.
We won't take a single back step.
Former professional basketball player is now the Republican Party's choice.
Can you imagine Royce White, the U.S. Senator?
White won the endorsement on May 18th with 67% of the vote.
There's nothing that guarantees we win, but I guarantee you if we lose, we will die. Good evening. Welcome back to another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio, powered by our favorite sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You have to buy tires from somebody. You might as well buy them from us and help fund the movement, help support the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement, and that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now. I'm your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and this is episode 265.
266.
Episode number 266. I apologize. Thank you for being here again this evening. It's been about a week. I was out of town at a national basketball tournament. We have this entire theme going for the campaign now, America's Coach. And the more and more I coach the young guys, the more and more I start to realize sports, bread and circuses, yes, the global commercial aspect of professional sports has in many ways become a distraction for society and especially for, let's say, hardworking, everyday American citizens, adults who pay bills and just need to get away from the hustle and bustle. And what better than to tune into, human beings and at the most highest competitive skilled level of physical gifts and talents, play a game. But beyond that, sports really is going to be one of the last real places in our society, especially as AI emerges. And what I mean by real is, and we're going to talk a little bit about this Diddy trial today before we get going with the clips, and I'll probably end up spending more time on Diddy than I maybe should, but I think it's important. But anyway, as AI emerges and social media and the internet, we see that people are online more than anything else in life. They say 70 to 80% of Americans are spending around 60% of their time online during the week, which is just a staggering number. 60% of over half of our time is spent on the internet. So we've already started to phase into what you could call a digital sort of symbiotic transhuman type of culture. Even spending that much time on the internet is a herald of what we should call, I don't know, digitalism, right? Futuristic, technological supremacy in some sense. But in basketball and sports, the consequences are still real, right? And I know that especially in MMA, like, for example, I could feel any way I want. I could say anything I want. I could have any opinion I want. I could try and pretend to be whoever I want to be. But when you get in that octagon and that cage locks behind you, you better block a punch. You better evade a punch. You better slip a punch. You better be able to move your feet and get away from a punch or get away from danger, or you better learn how to defend yourself, because if not, you're going to get your jaw broken. And that's just about as real as life gets. And it's not just MMA or boxing or, what they call the combat sports. It's also sports in general, like basketball. I could have whatever opinion of myself I want. I could think whatever I want. I could have 1,000 excuses. I could say whatever I want. My mom could say whatever they want. My dad, my girlfriend, my best friend, my grandparents, aunties and uncles, they come to the games on the weekends. They all got their opinion. And that's all well and good. Everybody's entitled to their opinion and their freedom of speech. This is America. But it doesn't change the reality. The reality is you have to find a way to get better. You have to find a way to improve. You have to find a way to be objective and honest with yourself about where you are in the thing, the goal, the agenda, the journey you want to pursue as an athlete. And as soon as you start to deviate from that, as soon as you start to lie to yourself about the reality, you'll find yourself not having the success that you want. And so that for that reason, sports is one of the last places where young people, most importantly, young people interact in a very real way, and they interact with each other in a very real way. So, you know, all that being said, it's uh, it's great to be able to coach the young guys. It really is. It keeps you grounded. It keeps me grounded. It keeps me excited. It keeps me in tune with the way that human beings develop. And sometimes we lose that as adults. We get lost and caught up in the adult world, the adult hustle and bustle of society, and we lose track of young people and just how they develop. Even our own kids. There's a difference. There's a difference between having your own child and then being in charge of 10 to 15 young 14-year-old boys and just seeing just how different kids or young men develop and the things that they go through and just their thought process. So, we enjoyed that over the last week. We had a huge national tournament. We went 2-2. We got some great content out of it. There's some great moments, between myself and the young men out there on the road, just fighting to compete and win. But I'm back now today, and we're going to start off by talking about this Diddy trial. What a segue, right? The young men and Diddy. I'm not making a comment about that. That's just no pun intended whatsoever. But this P Diddy trial has become the one of the most talked about things in popular culture. And I usually try and stay away from pop culture, especially when it pertains to the entertainment industry or even sports entertainment, the gossip about sports. There's a difference between the X's and O's and the legitimate physical competition or analysis of physical competition, and then the sort of gossipy thing that people do where they just posit opinions about, well, this guy, has a girlfriend and she's distracting him from it's like, give me a fucking break. It's just they're just building a business on top of sports. What they're doing, they're turning everything into a soap opera or into reality TV. It's obnoxious, but so I usually try and stay away from what they call culture, headlines for that reason. But in some ways, and I venture to say the term what's been commonly said that culture is upstream from politics. Politics is downstream from culture. That's a dangerous phrase. It really is because in many ways it's true, but in some ways when politics have become so concentrated, when power has become so centralized in the political class, the permanent political class, um, much of the culture is a product of a political framework or political predicate that's been set, at a national level, and in some ways at a global level. That's why we say the global affects the local, and so we're getting to a place I think in the history of this country and of civilization where we could rightfully say that politics are affecting the culture in a major way. I mean, we see that firsthand. That I don't even think anybody with common sense would argue that.
I think it's a lot more prominent now.
Of
At
course.
least when I look back on history, it always felt like they were kind of two different realms. And
Yeah.
yeah, the music industry would like touch on things,
Yeah.
but now they're all tied together.
Yeah.
It is a recent thing.
Yeah, it is recent. Politics is, but it's not just that politics is having a is more visible, is more prominent, is more talked about. It's that the evolution of policy that has been put in place is now starting to take root for so long that the consequences are bearing fruit, right?
Mhm.
The policy itself is starting to bear fruit, which takes time, right? We could put a law in place tomorrow. That doesn't mean we're going to see significant changes culture wide in any immediate future. But when you're talking about policies that were put in place, ideas, intellectual, academic ideas that have now been in place for 60 plus some years, at the tail end of that 60, 70, almost 100-year period, you're going to start to see significant cultural changes. And I think we're starting to see a lot of that now. So I'm going to touch on the Diddy thing because I do think it's important. Here's why. Um, Despite what I think about P. Diddy personally, which we all can see from the court case, from the eyewitness testimony, people who have talked about being in situations or being at events, parties, these infamous Diddy freak off parties and whatnot, that Diddy was a weird dude, a freaky dude. He's out there. Sexually, he's out there. Um, how far out there was the question, right? And I think that uh, we got to be careful here. I mean, there is a needle to thread here, and the reason why I'm really talking about it is because as we get further and further into a less real world, the legal system, the what they call the rule of law and the world of law is going to become just as important, or more important than ever before. There's going to have to be some grounding to a digital civilization in the world of real people with laws. The laws are going to be law and order. Laws are going to become important, and as such, the legal system, the justice system, jurisprudence. Jurisprudence is such an important idea. And this is where I think a lot of everyday American citizens have lost the thread, have been, consumed by WWE politics, have been consumed by popular reality TV show entertainment. Even politically, we've lost the thread here. We've lost the plot where jurisprudence, what constitutes legal precedence? What constitutes legal precedence when it comes to case law and criminal law and things like that? We gotta hone in as citizens. If we lose that plot and we start to deal with legal situations based on opinion and emotion and feeling and personal preference, there is no laws. There are no rules. That's not law. That's not a legal system. That's what you call a kangaroo court or a banana republic, and you get, witch hunts and lawfare and all kinds of other politically motivated legal action and legal proceedings, which we know doesn't work. We can look throughout history and see every time the legal system goes to that place, we look back on the other side of it and go, wow, a lot of people suffered a grave injustice because, for lack of a better way to put it, we the people, didn't have any maturity, any control over our emotions, and didn't have any integrity or discipline to maintain the legal system and legal structure. So, this entire Diddy deal, I mean, I said from the very beginning, the whole thing seemed strange. And I don't mean his sexuality or what the claims were against him. I meant the charges. The charges seemed odd. Uh, you know, Racketeering conspiracy is a very, very difficult. You got to realize this was intended for big organized crime figures, people like John Gotti, people like, the American mafia or the Russian mafia or, the triads or the Yakuza. I mean, these are multinational, international crime syndicates. These people, these individuals, the reason why Rudy Giuliani is somewhat vindicated in his use, is I would say, loose, fast and loose use of the RICO Act to circumvent constitutional law. The reason why you could say that Mayor Giuliani was vindicated is because when push came to shove, these people were guilty of what they were being accused of. It was just too difficult to obtain the evidence, uh, what you would say is necessary evidence, right? For example, the John Gotti, is running the Gambino crime family. He's considered the most powerful mob boss of the five New York mafia families, but they could never get one of these guys to turn on him. They could never get somebody to testify against him. They couldn't even get regular people who may have, been, intimidated by him or hurt by him to testify against him because they were scared that further retaliation would come down. So it became difficult to prosecute him. What did they do? They created this RICO Act, or they used a formally legislated RICO Act that was kind of dormant on the books to say, okay, now um, we're going to go after individual targets, whether they be individual people or individual crime organizations on conspiracy charges. And in order to convict them, we no longer need, to catch them on tape or to catch them with drugs or to catch them with a murder weapon or to catch them on video. Now all we need is somebody to testify that these individuals were cooperating together and conspiring to continue a criminal enterprise. Now, the gaffe about that was the FBI had already been surveilling guys like John Gotti. They know who the mobsters were. There was a little unspoken game between the law enforcement and the crime guys. They know who each other are. Us, the individual citizens, we're not in that world. In that world, you know that when the cops are watching you, you know when the FBI is parked in an unmarked van outside of your social club or your restaurant or your hangout or whatever it is. You know when you got an unmarked Fed car tailing you after you leave the night joint and whatever the case may be. These guys know they're being watched. The FBI knows that they know, and they're both playing a game back and forth to see if they could, catch the other or evade the other. So, you know, the, when a John Gotti got taken down on a RICO charge and they finally did catch him on wiretaps admitting to a lot of crimes, it vindicated Giuliani in using the racketeering conspiracy, the RICO charge against him. Diddy on a sexual RICO charge? I mean, it's kind of comical. I mean, it really is. And what it points to is that even the law, and we already knew this, but even the law is being used as a part of an ideological political agenda. And this is an extension of the Me Too phenomenon. And now a law that was intended to be used against, major international organized crime figures and crime syndicates is being watered down and being, let's say, extended, reaching beyond its jurisprudence to what it appears to be a take down a guy based on something that appears to be much more political behind the scenes than we're seeing. This pops up out of nowhere, and there's this video of him. Obviously, he was beating up his girlfriend Cassie, and he was beating her up. I mean, that part nobody can deny. But I guess the statute of limitations expired on that, and Cassie sued him, and she won a lawsuit and got paid, some undisclosed amount of money for the damages from that abuse that she suffered in that situation. And then shortly thereafter, there was just a tsunami of what was first rumor, sort of online gossip and chirps that Diddy was gonna be indicted, or that there were tapes or allegations flying around that P Diddy had been involved in these crazy sexual parties and whatnot, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, the charges came down, and sure, I mean, we could sit here and say, and this also touches on the spending, right? People don't understand how much it costs to prosecute a huge RICO case like this against an individual like P. Diddy, who has access to the best attorneys. Now, am I saying that we shouldn't charge the rich because it's going to cost we the people too much? We shouldn't try and bring justice? No, I'm not saying that. But I am saying that these prosecutors, especially in the federal government, need to be much more judicious with how they choose to charge things. The same thing with district attorneys. These district attorneys have been on record, like Kamala Harris, saying, hey, I could charge something knowing that I'm not going to follow through the trial, but hopefully try and get this person to plead guilty before we ever get to a trial. And I could use that. There's the famous line where she talked about with the stroke of my pen, and she said it with a kind of pompous, egotistical, attitude, like, as a district attorney or as an attorney general, with the stroke of my pen, I can sort of manipulate the legal process to the benefit of myself as an attorney general or district attorney, not necessarily the people. Because there's a good argument that people say, listen, if you don't have the evidence, if you don't have good evidence, you should not charge an individual, especially if it's going to cost the taxpayers a bunch of money and end up being nothing more than some petty charge at the end. It's a misuse of tax money, and that's what happens when the federal government or even the local government charges individuals on flimsy charges. And I thought these charges were flimsy from the beginning. I mean, I could just tell that it was based on gossip and hearsay, and what has become an arena of gossip on the internet. And you can't sit here and say that district attorneys or prosecutors or investigators aren't going to be influenced by public opinion. Increasingly, these officials of the court, these officials of government are going to be influenced by public opinion. Back when the country was first founded and we wrote the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights, you didn't have such a profound influence of public opinion. Your main hitters, the people who were actually governing, had a sort of insulated insight into government and government proceedings and law and what every Tom, Dick, and Harry all across the country thought, at least what it appears they think on the internet, didn't come to bear on the verdict on the outcomes in a lot of ways. Now you're a prosecutor, you're an investigator, you work in one of these FBI field offices or whatever the case may be. You're even a judge. You go home at night, you take your robe off, you take your work outfit off, your work clothes off, and you're jacked into the internet the same way as everybody else. We know that from the statistics. There's no way you believe if 80% of people are spending more than 60% of their time on the internet a week, that precludes the judges and district attorneys and cops and all of these officials of our government. It doesn't. They're jacked in the same way. So again, I thought these charges were flimsy, and there's an entire conversation that should rightfully happen about whether or not uh, the threshold necessary to bring charges and what the consequences should be for people who bring charges that end up not going anywhere. And again, from the evidence that was presented in this case, it never had a chance. That's the problem here. I mean, I could see if they presented a great case and it was like, well, okay, they presented a great case, but the jury still found him not guilty. The jury had no chance, had no choice but to find him not guilty. It wasn't even, I mean, there wasn't enough evidence here to wad a shotgun for the charges they were pursuing. Did the court case reveal a lot? Sure. And maybe that was the point. Maybe there was some very high up, political vendetta waged against P. Diddy, where this entire court case was solely intended to damage his reputation and damage his standing business wise. And that happens. I mean, that happens, and with the legal system is weaponized against individuals all the time. You got political lawfare, you got corporate lawfare. So that type of shit goes down in this country all the time, and we all know it. We all kind of dance around it because we would never like to see ourselves in the crosshairs of it. And we most of us, everyday people, aren't high up enough to be involved in that type of lawfare. You're not a Donald Trump. You're not a Sean Diddy Combs. You're not a individual where there's that much at stake in your own individual life, unless maybe you slip and fall at a Walmart and there's huge implications, from some lawsuit that may come down. Then you may find yourself in the middle of some lawfare and not even understand what you're involved in. But for most of us, it doesn't happen. But something was strange about these charges. Now, you could say that he beat up Cassie. Yeah, we saw that on tape. The statute of limitations expired on any type of criminal pursuit of that charge. Plus, there was a civil lawsuit that he allegedly, supposedly paid, and that was that. But it it got strange. I'm just gonna say it. It got strange in here, and I've been watching it from afar. It's not top on my list. You got us going to World War III on, three different spots in Asia, and you got, the deportations, the judicial crisis that Donald Trump is facing, with the deportations and all of that kind of thing. So, we got the vaccines and RFK just unmasked a bunch of evidence that the FDA, suppressed its own evidence about vaccine vaccines. I mean, so there's so much more important things going on, but this isn't nothing. This isn't nothing because, again, it signals that there's something deeply, deeply wrong with our legal system. Deeply wrong. It is completely inappropriate for prosecutors to charge people when they know they don't have enough evidence. One, They're trying to use the weight of the court, the weight of the people, us, we the people, and our tax money to bully or coerce somebody into pleading guilty to something that they're not guilty of. That's wrong on a moral basis, number one. Number two, and this is just equally important in no order. Um, Number two, when you charge somebody with something and you know that you don't have the evidence, what you're doing also is you're trying to manipulate the public's view of an individual or of the precedents, the legal precedents within the court system. And that is great is of great harm to the people. The people need there should be a standard so high and a trust so deep of our government and government officials and of the legal system that when a district attorney or a prosecutor goes to charge something, the people should feel confident. We should feel confident that somebody competent looked deeply into these issues before they decided to bring charges, right? Because being charged is no small matter. Being charged has grave consequences on your reputation, has grave consequences on your professional standing, and even many ways your legal standing. And like in this case here, Diddy's has had to spend the last, I think it's 60, 90 days, maybe even longer, in prison. I mean, in a jail. Of which case people die in jail. I mean, we saw Tory Lanez, and this kind of connects to the Tory Lanez case where I think Tory Lanez is innocent. You can't tell me that Tory Lanez isn't innocent. I mean, it's it's so clear to me that Tory Lanez is innocent. It's almost obnoxious that he's still sitting in prison. And what's even more obnoxious is that he was almost stabbed to death in prison by an inmate. And he could easily not be here anymore. And that kind of thing happens. Now, Diddy, I think, was confined in a protective, uh, a protective area because of his situation and charges. But the reality is, bad things happen in prison, and that's something else that should be and needs to be addressed. Is just how dangerous these prisons are. I think there's a part of the American public that kind of likes the idea of prisons being dangerous for people who have committed crimes, and there's some truth to that, but there's also a failure of degree of separation in what people are charged for and who they're imprisoned with. I mean, you got people who do very, very minor petty crimes under certain criminal code find themselves in a jail cell with a guy who's, convicted of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. I mean, and we're in the same cell or we're on the same cell block or we shouldn't even have to pass each other to go to recess. What they call rec, or to go to the yard. I shouldn't even have to come into contact with pedophiles and rapists and murderers if I'm in there for a drug charge. And I don't care how big the drug charge is. I mean, I could have sold 1,000 kilos of cocaine. I mean, real felony drug charge. I shouldn't have to be in there with violent criminals. That's not the same thing. So again, being charged and then being denied bail, and I mean, he has a great claim here to sue for a lot of money. Diddy does. To sue the federal government for a lot of money because they denied him bail. And okay, if you deny somebody bail and they get found guilty, that's one thing. If you deny somebody bail and they get acquitted of most of the serious charges, the charges that would indicate that they need to be denied bail, you got legal liability. You got problems there. Um, again, the charging thing is one thing. The next thing, and I think the more important thing is this, and then we're going to get to the clips. The more important thing is the sexual culture in this country. And the two charges that he did get found guilty for were transportation of a prostitute. Now, that's almost laughable too. The prostitution laws in this country are so outdated and so obsolete. They should have thrown that one out. He's got a strong case for appeal right there, just because the prostitution, the language, the legal jurisprudence around prostitution itself is so flimsy that it's almost. I mean, again, what are we talking about? You mean to tell me if I'm 21 years old and I go sign up for an OnlyFans and I use a third party middleman to broker the exchange of sexual content and in some ways sexual interaction, whether it be chatting or messaging or whatever the case may be, there's some exchange of nudity, pornography, sex. There's a transaction of sex online that it doesn't qualify as prostitution. So the online OnlyFans models aren't prostitutes. Even furthermore, let's take it a level down. Porn stars aren't prostitutes. What the fuck are we talking about? It's almost it's ridiculous. I mean, it literally when you really think about it, what it starts to show is people like Diddy, whether you like him or not, whether you agree or not, you think he's reprehensible or not, whatever your opinion is of him, he becomes a scapegoat. And there's nothing more dangerous in a society than what they call false catharsis, scapegoats. Scapegoating is one of the most dangerous things in societies because it makes you feel like you've reconciled a place in society where there's real degradation, where there's real decay and corruption by this one person being punished for something, even if they didn't do it, even if it doesn't really make sense, even if the logic doesn't square. It's largely what they try to do to Donald Trump. And I'm not creating a correlation between Trump and Diddy other than to say that society wants Donald Trump to be this great scapegoat and say, oh, well, the problems in our society are on these people like Trump. And it's just immature. It's immature, it's lazy, it's cowardly. Really, it's cowardly because there are many things in our society that need to be fixed. And when we feel unempowered to fix them, we are often okay with the system, the establishment serving us up a scapegoat on a platter for us to okay. Okay, society still has the reins. Okay, we're still okay. Everything is all right. Everything is going as planned. It's not going as planned. Our society is losing its fucking mind and the screws are coming undone. Again, you can't tell me that the OnlyFans models aren't prostitutes. They are. You can't tell me that porn stars aren't prostitutes. They are. So if I'm a porn company, a porn production company, and I pay for I don't know what one of these famous porn stars' names is even. I don't, feel free to put in the chat if you're familiar. But if I pay for the airfare for one of these porn stars to come and shoot a porn scene, or let's say, even more importantly, what if she lives in what if we're in California and everybody knows California is more or less the capital where pornography is filmed. Let's say she lives in Northern California and I get her a car or a train ticket, or I have somebody, transport her down to Southern California to the studio to shoot the scene. Is that not transportation of a prostitute? Of course it is. It's not even a question. Any sane, logical, reasonable, honest person can hear that and go, of course it is. Of course that's transportation of prostitute. What are we talking about? And my point isn't to say that that's okay or that that's right or that we should accept that in society. My point is that we do accept it in society. That's not a question. We do accept it. Not only do we accept it when we're, jerking off and we got a jerk off problem in this society, but we accept it on a moral and legal basis. We go, oh, well, that's not prostitute. No, it is. It is. So then if we accept that, if we accept that this form of transporting prostitutes is okay, then how does Diddy end up charged in a federal court for it? I mean, it's just so false. It's so false in its pretense. And it's got nothing to do with Diddy. It's got nothing to do with whether he's a good person or not. This has to do with the way that the law is used, the way that the law is upheld, the integrity of the legal system. So, I for one am somewhat relieved to see that Diddy gets off on these charges because they were weak charges and the evidence was profoundly underwhelming, profoundly underwhelming. Let's take it even one level deeper, okay? It is so strange to me to see the mainstream media proliferate all forms of sexual perversion, only to then take the most popular person they can find at the time with enough allegations against them and say, you know what? On most days, we accept any and all forms of sexual depravity, but you're going to be the fall guy on this day. That is probably the deepest and most concerning thing about this entire Diddy trial is the entire momentum of corporate America, of the global corporate community, of the establishment, the political establishment, would seemingly reward a black man, a successful black man, for sexual depravity, would reward a black man for homosexuality, would reward a black man for non-traditional, non-conformist, what they would call non-monogamous sexual preferences. And then as soon as one does it, we all sit around and go, well, that's over the line. Is it over the line? It's over the line for some people, no doubt. The question is it over the line for the people who brought the charges? The question is it over the line for the people who have the criticism of him? The question is it the over the line for us as a society, or are we just using him as a scapegoat? Obviously, it's not over the fucking line, guys. Let's be honest. And the thing about another reason I bring this up is because, I was one of the first people to talk about mental health publicly when it was taboo. And you can go on the record. I asked artificial intelligence about my own journey to see, how AI is tracking. And right there in plain speak, they go, Royce White was talking about mental health when other people just weren't. Cool. I appreciate AI giving me that compliment. And I think that is a compliment. But so I've been talking about mental health for a long time, and it was taboo when I first started talking about it, but it was taboo to an extent. The most taboo thing in our society is not mental health, it's sex. Seriously. If mental health is taboo, then sex is double taboo, triple taboo, quadruple taboo. And we don't want to have an honest conversation about sex in this country, about the sexual culture. We're double speak. We're split tongued when we talk about the sexual culture in our own society, in our own country. And it's, well, like I said, well, Diddy's over the line. He's having parties and, they're doing drugs and he's got multiple partners and, him and his, he's obviously a cuck, for lack of a better term, right? I mean, he's is supposedly from Cassie's testimony, and, this is a little graphic and explicit, but supposedly he was, sitting in the corner watching, and then, or he'd be in the other room while she was with one of the men that he, they'd set up, and then all of a sudden she'd come into the other room and he would want her to, rub the other guy's ejaculate on his nipples or something crazy. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy kinky. It's out there, way out there, way out there. I mean, come on. We all know there's some freaky stuff happening. This exceeded the normal level of freaky. But we also know that there's some even freakier stuff happening out there in our society, of which is happening in the public. See, that's what I'm saying. There's regular sex, okay? There's like man, woman like each other, start dating. There's romance, there's sparks, there's chemistry. We want to have sex. Maybe we're married, maybe we're not. Maybe we want to have a long-term relationship. Maybe we're just having fun for the night, the weekend, the next couple of months. We have sex. We got our kinks and things that we're into, and that plays out in that little relationship. Maybe there's that. Okay, then there's freaky. Then there's your echelon of people who are explicitly into some sexually freaky stuff. Okay, but they're everyday people. Okay, then you got your celebrities who have access to any and everything they want at all times, and their level of freaky is going to be different because they have a different level of access. They have a different level of freedom, free time. And then there's like an underworld, right? There's like a sexual perverted underworld where, now you're getting into like BDSM and underground sex parties and clubs and swingers and, that is out there, right? So Diddy was playing around on that level, right? Where he was a crossover between celebrity access to a freaky underworld that he kind of created, invented himself, which makes a lot of sense because, if you're P. Diddy, You don't really just want to walk into your local swinger party. You can't because you're P. Diddy. I mean, the dude's, A-list famous. He got a star in the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He's P. Diddy. You know what I mean? He can't just walk into your average swinger club and go, "Hey guys, I'm here for the good time." It doesn't work like that. So he created his own world basically of this kind of swinger underground thing. And yeah, it's beyond freaky. But you know what's even more freaky than that? What's more freaky is showing up to one of these weird public sex festivals, trans LGBTQ festivals, and you got grown men that are dressed up in leather latex, wearing dog collars, and having women who are dressed half naked walk them around in public like puppies. That's beyond. Because not only is there a sort of sexual kink to it, there's a public humiliation aspect to it, which means that not only do they get off on the thing, they get off on other people having to watch them do the thing. And they are kind of trying to force it on the public, which is why so many people were and are rightfully upset about what they're pushing in the schools, is because they're trying to force it on the kids. And they could say what they want, but to me, there is a level of kink where people get off on talking about people who are perverted and pedophile in their psychology. They get off on talking about sex in front of kids. It's not just that they want to touch a kid or they want to do something perverse to a kid. There's that. But on the outskirts of that is I get off about even saying something sexual in front of a kid. People are weird. I'm just going to say people are fucking weird. And we could try and tiptoe around it, dance around it. We can act like the Epstein thing isn't still hanging out there. Cool, but it is. And people are fucking weird. And I'm not even saying we should be so judgmental about it because we all let society get to this place. We're all culpable in some ways. I think the hard line should be around children. And that's what I want to say about this Diddy trial. To me, when I watched it, listened to it, all I heard were a bunch of grown-ass people who were involved in some sexual stuff that they shouldn't have been involved in. It would appear they didn't necessarily want to be involved in deep down, but on the surface at the time, they either let it go, they were persuaded by money or power, influence, status, or whatever. They thought it was a good idea at the moment. Whatever it is, they're expressing regret, right? Their witch hunt of Diddy is an expression of their own regret, their own resent of their involvement. And that's just fucking corny. The whole, I had sex with him, it was consensual, but I regret it the next day, so it's rape, is like, huh? It's the same here. It's, oh, well, I let Diddy force me to have sex with another person, but I didn't really, now I feel bad about it, so it was abuse. No, it wasn't. I'm just telling you guys, no, it was. No, the fuck it wasn't, guys. Stop it. Stop it. And here's the thing. Even in here, there's a sliver of uh our own willingness to sell out and our own acceptance of what it means to sell out. See, and this ties all the way back to the political, that in some ways everybody's on the payroll and we all sell out in some way, but this really touches on it like directly, because when you say, oh, well, somebody was in a position of power, and because this individual below them didn't want to lose their job, they didn't want to lose their status, they didn't want to lose their lifestyle, they didn't want to lose their whatever, they conceded to do the thing. That makes you a sellout. I mean, by definition, if I'm in the NBA, for example, and this never happened when I was in the NBA, but I don't have to use the NBA. I'm in company A, okay? And there's a hierarchy. And the CEO, brings me into his office one day and says, "Hey, look, you've been doing a great job. We're really happy with the work you're doing, but we're making some, cuts, some changes, and we might have to let some people go, and we would love to keep you, but in order for us to keep you, you're gonna have to get down on your knees right here and blow me." Uh, First of all, I'm leaving that fucking room with an assault charge, number one. But most people, I don't know what most people would do in that situation. But what I can say definitively is if you choose to go through with that, you have sold out. I mean, you sold out your integrity right there on the spot when it comes to your own standards for your body and your sexuality and whatever the case. You've sold out. And so what we're doing again when we say, well, Diddy was so powerful that these people felt they had to do it. No, you don't have to do shit. And to even concede that there's a situation, first of all, he didn't hold a gun to their head. Now that's different. See, there's levels to it. If he holds a gun to your head, if he threatens your life, if he says, you do this or I'm going to kill you right here and now, that's different. That's illegal. But if he says, hey, I want you to do this. Are you loyal to me? And you go, well, I don't, in your mind, you're going, I don't really want to do it. But in, in real life, in your you go, well, yeah, I'll do it. I'm loyal. You're weak. You're a weak individual. You- I'm sorry to say it. This is just the truth of it, guys. You're weak. You're weak. You sold out. And so that's what I looked at. This Diddy case is it lets us into a lot of deep things about society. And again, I do think that Diddy's a predator in some sense, but not in a sense that we all aren't predatory in a way. Again, it's like the great example. Well, you getting a girl drunk, and Professor Penn talks about it all the time. Back in his day, they only went to the bars. They only went out to get a girl and get a girl drunk. That used to be a regular thing. There wasn't even a frown upon uh, taking a girl out, getting her drunk, and having sex with her. That was like what you were trying to do. In my generation where I grew up, that wasn't seen as something that you were trying to do, but it was, you did go to a party, in many ways to be in the presence of or the circumstance of a lot of women who were getting drunk and you could, have your pick of the roster. That was still a thing. And even now, I still see it today. I mean, you mean to tell me all these people are going to these crazy, kinky LGBTQ sexual, genderless, what I call omnisexual, but they call it, I don't know if it's pansexual or asexual. I don't even know what the terms are anymore, but there's one of them where you're attracted to anything and everything. Anything. You're attracted to anything. I call it omnisexual, but I don't know what they call. I don't know what the actual term is. I don't give a fuck what the actual term is. It's omnisexual. You're just, whatever. It's cool. Cool. But you can't tell me these people are going to these parties, getting drunk, doing more drugs than ever, coke, LSD, all these other sex, drugs, and microdosing and all this shit, and all these weird meditative cults. These motherfuckers acting like they're going on these retreats to meditate and shit. They're not going to fucking meditate. They're going to do drugs, pretend like they're bettering themselves, hoping that they could find some romantic partner where they can both come together and pretend like they're reaching enlightenment together, and they're just getting high and fucking. I mean, Tanner, am I lying? Maybe I'm way off. I see it though. I see it clear as day. I see you people with clear eyes. And I'm just a guy who would tell you the truth. All these strange, meditative coalitions, co-ops, and people are going for 2 weeks, and they're like, we're going to find our to protect our energy, make sure that the vibe is right. I'm going to vibe. I'm just here to vibe. And they're all on drugs. They're all getting high. Seriously, they're getting high. They'll tell you they're getting high. They'll lie and act like the getting high part isn't the motivation, or that the sex that they have at the end of getting high isn't the motivation. But we all know that's not how human beings really work. And again, we can look at the results and the data from the internet and the pornography to realize that the motivation is quite clear. People want to get high, have sex, and detach from reality because reality is hard. So, okay, that's fine. If that's what we want to do, okay. Just don't try and make Diddy the scapegoat. Just don't try and say, well, Diddy's a little too freaky. Okay. But society then is a little too freaky. And we got to realize, whether we like it or not, Diddy's a product of the society. And I kind of feel bad for him for this reason. The real the most predatory thing in this whole scenario is a superstructure corporately, politically, culturally, that is almost incentivizing this debauched, depraved, homosexual movement, especially for black men. I think black men more than any they there is no greater get off for that political movement than to see a black man who is sexually debauched and humiliated. To me, it appears that way. It appears that there's no greater get off than to build a black man up, like you see a lot of these pro athletes wearing dresses and purses now. They come into the game with purses, and every time I can't tell you how irritating it is to watch these players come to the arena and they're walking through the tunnel, like they're at fucking Fashion Week in Milan or some shit. It's like, dude, first of all, that outfit's ugly. You could say I don't know fashion, but you're wearing a fucking dress, and I don't care what way you spin it. It doesn't make it's not a fashion statement because you blur the lines of what gender your clothes belong to. I mean, that's become the default corny fashion statement now. It's like, okay, you know, I'm high fashion because I wear some shit that it almost looks like a girl should wear, or just full out. I'm in girls' clothes. I'm in women's clothes. So now I'm high fashion. It's like, no, you're fucking corny. Number one, you're corny. Number two, you're weird. But number three, and more importantly, I think most importantly, all of you who are snapping the pictures acting like this is high fashion, you're even more weird. It's like you bought into the lunacy and you're willing to promulgate it like it's a real thing. It's fucking weird. So, nothing is it seems is more sought out than for young, strong, uh, um, charismatic, talented black men to be humiliated by this homosexual movement. And so you get Diddy, who's like, a throwback. He's old school. I mean, and maybe he's been homosexual the whole time. I don't know, but it's very possible that he was, introduced to this culture lifestyle movement at an early stage of it and has been kind of groomed in it himself at a high level. We don't know. There's all kind of stuff here that's still, unknown, and it just seems to me again. I saw in Washington D.C. This is just, everything does tie political. In Washington D.C., there was some pride march, and somebody let off a smoke bomb or tear gas or something, and you see all these people running, and most of them are black. And I can't tell you how many black women there were. There was a video. You can find it online. Maybe I'll post it later. But there was a video where these young people were at a Washington monument in Washington, D.C. for some type of gathering. I think it was a pride, some type of pride event. And a smoke bomb's let off, tear gas, and they're coughing and they're running. And I can't tell you how many young black women were there. And there were a few stray black men, and they're switching, and you can tell that they're real light in their loafers and whatnot. They're carrying LGBTQ flags. And I'm just watching, I'm going, since when did the black community become so gay? Honestly, like when I was growing up, in the 90s, the black community was not gay. Like I went to a public school. There was no prevalent gay movement in the hood, in the neighborhood. There just wasn't. You could believe me or not, but and if you black folks out there want to try and deny it, maybe you didn't grow up in the hood. That's possible. Maybe you grew up in this gentrified sort of suburban outskirt where you're going to the affluent public, yuppie liberal public school. Maybe that's how you ended up gay. We got to consider that too. But it was strange to see this video, and I only say it again because I see all the time, black women online in these comments saying how much they support the LGBTQ and people living in their truth. And if that's what he wants to do, that's what he wants to do. And as soon as a black man like Diddy is in the crosshairs, they can't wait to make fun of him for being gay. See, me and my boys, we're going to make fun of Diddy for being gay. but we're not ashamed of that. We're not trying to hide it. We're not going in public in comments and going, well, it's okay, that he's, we just we can call the balls and strikes. Dude, you did what? You asked her to do what? Really? That's fucking weird, dude. But when you're, some of these black women, for example, they're like, no, it's cool. Anything goes, just explore yourself. And then, when a guy's gay, they'll use it against him. Like I see it all the time is just like these couples become estranged. And all of a sudden you got these women coming out after the fact trying to out their former boyfriend, husband, whatever, for having, for being gay. And it's just like, but I thought you supported the LGBT. Oh, you just don't want your guy to swing both ways. I mean, how corrupt is that? That's corrupt. I'm okay with the LGBTQ movement. I'm okay with this sort of free-for-all sexual culture. I just don't want my guy to be gay. I don't want my guy to be bisexual or to dabble and to swing, the barn door to swing both ways, so to speak. I mean, guys, we got to get a grip on this stuff, and that's all I'll say. The sexual culture in this country is out of control. It's been out of control a long time, as evident by all the online prostitution, whether it be Instagram, OnlyFans, or whatever other medium. The porn is so widespread, it's like AI level widespread. I don't even know if we could reel in the porn at this point. It's so widespread. So that speaks to the culture we've created in and of itself. And, we don't need scapegoats. If we're going to do something about the sexual culture, if we have a problem with the sexual depravity in this country, let's do something real about it. Let's actually do something about it. Let's not, let's not make Diddy be the fall guy of all the sexual decay in America or around the world. Because it's number one, it's just dishonest. And more importantly, it's not going to change it. That's the reality. And imagine this, Diddy would have went to jail. Had he been found guilty by a jury of his peers, he would have went to jail for life. And you motherfuckers still would have been around here just as kinky and freaky as you ever been. Right? And what's even more astounding is even the people who said they were victims of Diddy's abuse would have probably still been running around here as freaky and kinky as they ever been. So what does it do? If the legal system and the justice system is not there to change things, to actually bring justice that's substantive, that changes the trajectory of things, then it's just a mechanism of futility, and we're really not getting anything done. As opposed to like the deportation courts, right? You see, there's a legal mechanism where you see the results. Yeah, fentanyl is way down. we put a hard line on the border, said we have a border. You come across this border, or if you came across this border in the last 4 years, your ass is going back. And the fentanyl is down. Substantive change from the legal system in the border. Diddy witch hunt trial, and it was a witch hunt, and I don't like Diddy. I think Diddy's a raging Democrat liberal type. He kind of sold out to that movement, and now it makes sense that he supported Lil Nas X, and we were all looking and people been saying it, 50 Cent and all these other rappers, they've been hitting at it going like, man, Diddy's gay. I really didn't know enough about, I really didn't watch enough about hip hop gossip to really know that people were saying he was gay this whole time until the charges came. Then you see them going back to like 2005 of all these people saying it, and you're like, damn, now that I see it, it's kind of obvious. But, I didn't pay close enough attention. So, it's again, people been talking about Diddy for a long time, and he very well, is probably guilty of things that he's been accused of, like, having sex parties. The question is it illegal? And those are two separate questions. Now, if you guys want to cancel Diddy and never buy his music, never listen to his music, if the corporations never want to do business with him again, if no girl ever wants to date him again, which ain't gonna happen because money talks, we all know that, or else there wouldn't be an OnlyFans. If am I right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yo, I mean, first of all, let's be honest. There are girls that are willing to have sex with men who are gay and bisexual if the price is right. We know that. So let's not dance around that. So, but again, if a lot of women say, you know what, I would never date Diddy, no matter what, because of what's come out here, fine. That's completely reasonable. Actually, that make a lot of sense. He kind of be sort of publicly ostracized from society, kind of exiled from public. That makes sense. But to send a man to prison is different. And we have to start to separate the two. That's how we got to this place where we have kangaroo courts in the first place, because we didn't want to separate the two. We went, Donald Trump's an asshole. I don't like the way he tweets. I don't like what he says about this. So it's okay for them to send him to jail for the rest of his life, or it's okay for them to kill him. These things are inappropriate. They're immature. They're lazy, and they are incessantly corrupt and wicked. We have to be careful. So now we're going to get to the reaction clips here, and we're going to zoom through these. I hope you got. We're going to keep talking about this Diddy thing as it unfolds. Again, I think he's going to have an appeal even on the transportation of prostitute charge, and he'll probably end up having probation or house arrest at the very most. If not, he'll probably serve some very light sentence, 12 months or maybe 16 months in some camp fed, would be very light, minimal security, and it'd be like, tennis courts and a walk in the park for him. And he'll come home early from that as well, because he's never been in any legal trouble before. So, this whole thing is going to blow over. The question is, and I say this, and I hope that P. Diddy would hear this. Hopefully through all of this, he does change his life, because regardless if I think it's legal or illegal, there's obviously something very wrong in his life. And it involves drugs and drug addiction, and it involves addiction to sex, which people deal with. Many, many people deal with sex addiction. He's dealing with it at a different level. And I hope that through this whole thing, he gets a second chance here, that he changes his life, and that some of the people around him start to change their lives as well, as kids and other people who are affected. So we wish the best come out of every situation. Just like we wish the best comes out of this Iran-Israel war. We hope that the best comes out of it. We prepare for the worst. We hope for the best. So there's my take on Diddy and this whole non-guilty verdict that came down today. Let's have our first video, Tanner.
No more pronouns, no more climate change obsession, no more emergency vaccine mandates, no more dudes in dresses. We're done with that shit.
Apropos to the conversation, I guess. And it's scary that the Secretary of Defense even has to make that statement, but he does, because that's where our society has gotten. Shout out to Pete Hegseth. I like Pete. I was on Pete's show once when I ran in 2022. Pete's from Minnesota, obviously. Is Pete more of an establishment guy than I take to? Yeah, I would say so. But I'd say him and a bunch of other people are coming around, and I think he's done a great job so far serving the Trump administration here. And I love seeing a younger guy, and a younger guy like Pete, and a Minnesota guy in a position than what we've had in the past in terms of Secretary of Defense. And I think he's doing some great things. And I think even that statement right there is bold enough to give him some big credit, because there have been former secretaries of defense that wouldn't even broach the topic, wouldn't even act like it's a real issue. And it is a real issue. Our military, our national security needs to stay free from all of the crazy woke ideology about gender neutral pronouns and all that bullshit. We got to be combat ready. We're going to talk about that on Friday with the great Professor Penn in our Hebrews episode with everything breaking out militarily. So we're going to talk more geopolitics and military on Friday. But we got to be battle ready. We're in a war with China. We are in a war with China right now. It's on. It's not tomorrow. It's not when the bombs are let off. It's not 20 years from now. It is right now. They've declared war on us. The fentanyl is a payback from the opium wars with the British Empire. We're already in the war with China. The question is how it's going to play out, and we need our military to be battle ready and focused, on their A game. So shout out to Pete Hegseth, and he's doing a great job so far. Next video.
So what happened? Because you didn't find bin Laden there, but you found all of his henchmen.
Yeah.
You killed him. bomb.
Yeah.
And then are you like done? Because bin Laden's still out there.
Someone called a ceasefire. And I would also say there's a couple helicopters flew over the battlefield, which I still to this day don't know who they were.
Oh, you think he was escaping?
I look at it this way. If the first 10 days of the war, 10 guys, bin Laden, where's the war on terror at?
Yeah.
Oh, this is interesting.
The checkbook would have never got opened.
Oh, that's really interesting.
That's what I think.
Okay. There is his name is John McPhee, right?
I believe so. I'm sorry. Yeah.
John McPhee, John Shrek McPhee, also known as the Sheriff of Baghdad, Delta Force Special Operator, very, very tenured, uh, very accomplished Delta Force operator and military veteran, throwing a flag on the entire Afghanistan, the initial Afghanistan invasion, and how the whole thing went down. And again, you could call him a conspiracy theorist too. I remember when I said the three boomer beliefs the three boomer beliefs that are absurd, the moon landings, the magic bullet theory, JFK, and 9/11. And I had all these people online go, "Oh, you are a conspiracy theorist." Well, there's your 9/11 one right there. Again. And when I say 9/11, I don't mean did the planes hit or, you guys ask questions about all of that. Tower 7, obviously, there's a great question about Tower 7, rightfully so. I mean, Tower 7 was blown up. I mean, that almost is a foregone conclusion. The question is why and who at this point. But there's no way you can tell me that the Twin Towers collapsing eventually ended up collapsing Tower 7. That's just absurd. From an engineer, I've asked so many engineers. No, I don't know how it happened. It would be an anomaly of anomalies if that was to happen. So maybe it did, but it's far out there. So, but we're not even talking about that. We're talking about everything that came after 9/11, everything that's connected to 9/11. And much of the question is about Osama bin Laden, where he came from, who funded him, where was he? Did we capture him? Did we not capture him? Did we end up killing him? Where was his body? We left his body at sea when we finally did capture him all those years later. He was in Pakistan. There's a lot of questions still about 9/11 and how the whole thing went down. A lot of times these things just get roped off, pushed to the side, classified, and you never hear about him again. Now, because of podcasts and guys like John McPhee, who's, he's already, if you hear his warfighting stories, is a man of incredible courage and sort of a cartoonish like valor, and kind of got a crazy to him that you gotta appreciate. Yeah, I surely have. I watched a full interview of him with Sean Ryan, and he's an interesting dude, a dude that you would want to hang around. I would say, I don't know if you want to be underneath him as a subordinate in the military because he seemed like he'd be a tough nosed, no nonsense, ass kicking kind of dude. But you definitely want to have a beer with him, right? He seems like a real cool dude. But it's courageous for him to say that on Megyn Kelly's show. To question whether or not Osama bin Laden or somebody was airlifted out of the battle at Tora Bora is a courageous thing to say. And we're seeing a lot more of this now. We're seeing a lot more of these people who aren't conspiracy. I mean, these people aren't, everyday average Joes. Okay. This dude is one of the storied war fighters in recent American military history. And, he's as accomplished as they come. From the two Middle East theaters there, the two wars that we fought in the Middle East theater, he's as accomplished as they come. You're talking about a guy who's a killer. It don't get in John Wick. That shit's a movie. This dude is the genuine article. I mean, this dude is a trained killer. Delta Force. It doesn't get no more deadly, and highly skilled and trained than the Delta guys. It just it's almost hard to even describe. You'd have to go and listen to the other military guys talk about Delta guys to understand who the fuck this dude is. And so for him to say it is like, He's just making an honest observation. We, the people, we got to decide what we do with it. And if we continue to live in the facade or if we start to ask genuine questions, real simple questions like, well, where were those two helicopters going? There could be an explanation. Doesn't mean that Osama bin Laden was secretly airlifted out of the out of the combat zone. Doesn't mean that, but it's right to ask the question. And the bigger statement that he made was, if we killed Osama bin Laden in the opening 10 days, would the checkbook have been opened? And how many people would have got would have got their water cut off, their dog bowl taken away, had we actually killed Osama bin Laden in the first 10 days? And what he's talking about is military-industrial complex. And it's so relevant today. Let's go to the next clip.
So you're saying elements
This
of the
was
U.S.
9/11,
government
right?
worked really, really hard to hide the fact that they could have prevented 9/11.
What I can tell you unequivocally is there was a cover-up. Tony Schaefer got approval from his commanding general after this whole thing happened. His memoirs are called Dark Heart. So he wrote the book. He went to his commanding general to review the book as his protocol. His commanding general said, fine, Tony, there's nothing there that's a problem. Publish it. Tony publishes the book. Our deep state finds out he's publishing the book. A cease and desist order is issued against the publisher. Stop publishing the book. It's too late. Our government buys all 10,000 copies of the first edition of Dark Heart with taxpayer money, and they destroy them. So I asked Tony, you have the original version of the book, right? Yes, here it is, Congressman. You have the redacted version, right? Yes, here it is. What did they want out of your book that was so sensitive? What secret information were you giving, Tony? What classified information did your boss not see? He said, Congressman, the only thing they wanted out of my book was the fact that I named Zelikow and that I had briefed him in advance. That, Tucker, is treason.
There's a former Congress. I mean, when you watch this stuff, Tanner, does it shock you how easy this is defined and how few people probably know what's being implied there?
Yeah. I mean, you're gonna have to unpack it for me because I don't even know what
Okay,
that name is.
Well, first of all, this is a former congressman, former Republican congressman, by the way, and he was obviously involved in on some of the intelligence committees or the national security committees, some of the committees involved in national security, and he has since spoken out a lot about the wars in the Middle East, Iraq and Afghanistan, and what went on there. And in this clip, he's essentially saying that a gentleman was going to release a book who had, was privy to what many consider classified information, and that the deep state, and when he says the deep state, the State Department or different agencies, named or unnamed agencies, filed an injunction against the release of his book. And what they wanted out of the book was that he had briefed a military official, a high up or State Department official, before 9/11, that 9/11 was potentially going to happen, and that's the only thing that they wanted out of the book, was that they had prior knowledge to the attacks before they happened. And you can make of that what you will. You can make of that what you will. You could say, well, they just didn't want to be sued. They didn't want to be liable, blah, 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 blah. Okay, fine. The point is, when people say that there was a cover-up in 9/11, like this congressman is saying, okay, not just because he's a congressman doesn't mean his word is gold, because there are plenty of congressmen who I wouldn't believe, if they came out and said the sky was blue, I'd still question it if I didn't have better common sense. But, just because he's a congressman doesn't mean he's telling the truth. But it is of some substance because of how involved he was with certain, intel committees. And what does he have to lie for? It looks like a man who's in the twilight of his life, and he's on there with Tucker Carlson. I know there's a growing conservative movement who thinks Tucker Carlson is just, batshit. But he's talking to these people. I mean, he's a journalist. He's a media guy. He's a journalist. I mean, what is he supposed to think if he's talking to a former congressman who sits down on his couch, chair, and goes, yeah, this was a cover-up? I mean, what's he supposed to? No, it's not. That used to be Tucker Carlson, as a matter of fact. And Tucker will tell you that himself. In Tucker's earlier years, he used to be a guy where he would sit down with a man like this, hear that there was a cover-up, and he would probably scoff at it. Now, in his older wisdom, he's starting to look at these things and go, well, maybe there's something to it. And I think the rest of the American public should too. I think there should be an investigation into 9/11. We deserve to know what happened. We deserve to know what the intelligence was. We deserve to know what we got pulled into a war that ended up costing countless lives and even more tax dollars for a number of years. Plus, we got an opioid crisis from it. Again, I always tell people the greatest thing to come from Afghanistan, wasn't the money that we left behind in equipment for the Taliban and our withdrawal. The greatest thing to come from Afghanistan, the war in Afghanistan, was the opioid crisis that we have now. Because the poppy production went from 3% of the world's production to 90% while we were in Afghanistan. We stewarded the rise of Afghanistan becoming the heart of the beating heart of the opioid crisis all around the world, but mostly here at home. So yeah, we deserve to know. There should be investigations, no doubt. And when a past congressman says there was a cover up here, there was treason here, can we at least consider it? I mean, is it okay to look into it? Because it starts to feel like we can't even. It's like I'm supposed to act like I didn't see that. It's like, well, yeah, congressman said it, but who really thinks 9/11 was a cover-up? He does. Because I'm sure there's huge consequences for him even saying that, given the security clearances he might have had and whatnot. So, yeah, we're going to be looking into it, and we don't give a fuck if you don't like it out there. We're going to continue looking. We're going to keep pulling on the thread until the whole damn thing unravels. Let's go to the next clip.
The obsession with Israel, when we're talking about foreign countries,
hardly an obsession.
You're not talking about Chinese, you're not talking about Japanese, you're not talking about the Brits, you're not talking about the French. The question, what about the Jews? What about the Jews?
Oh, I'm an anti-Semite now.
Senator, you're asking the questions, Tucker. You're asking, why are the Jews controlling our foreign policy?
Senator,
that's what you just asked.
Hardly saying that, and I have.
That is exactly what you just said.
Well, actually, I can speak for myself and tell you what I am saying.
Good.
On behalf not simply of myself, but of my many Jewish friends who would have the same questions, which is to what extent, and it's interesting you're trying to derail my questions by calling me an anti-Semite, which you are.
I did not.
Of course you are. And rather than be honorable enough to say it right to my face, you are in a sleazy feline way implying it or just asking questions about the Jews. I'm not asking questions about the Jews. There's nothing to do with Jews or Judaism. It has to do with the foreign government.
Isn't Israel controlling our foreign policy? That's not about the Jews?
You said, I'm asking.
No, it's not about the Jews, actually.
Feline. So let's be clear.
Wait, can you pause this? Pause it, Tam. We're going to have to run this back. This is what these professional politicians do. And he is a sleazeball. And I don't really follow Ted Cruz, although I know he's a uniparty fruitcake, and he is. And if people don't like that, I don't really give a fuck. Ted Cruz is everything that's wrong with the Republican Party and American politics. He's a sweet-talking, fast-talking lawyer, uniparty shill, and this is a prime example. And these guys will talk you in circles, and the insulting part is they think the average American citizen loses the plot because they're very impressed with their own education. They're very impressed with their own intelligence, right? Their own vocabulary, their own vernacular. They're very impressed with themselves, so it's easy for them to think that the American public loses the plot. And a lot of times we do, because if not, then Ted Cruz wouldn't have been reelected. Because this right here, this level of dishonest this level of dishonesty, this manipulative line of dialogue here should be enough to have him not be reelected. Just this alone. Honestly, this type of dishonesty right here, it should be enough that he doesn't get reelected. I mean, hand over fist. It's not even close. Because first of all, he starts off the clip by saying, well, why are you so obsessed with the Jews? Why are you so obsessed? Like like if you ask a question, a basic question about Israel or a war that's popping off in real time, that equals a sort of disproportionate obsession with the issue. What he's conflating is a real thread of anti-Semitic dialogue that goes on in this country and all around the world at any time for the last, several hundred years. And the situation that's occurring or that was occurring right at that moment. And I mean, and that's the bullshit cover story. If Israel can get involved in any level geopolitical conflict, and nobody can ask any question about it because of the longstanding history of anti-Semitic dialogue, if that all gets conflated into one, then we're handicapping the conversation, number one. But number two, we're kind of handicapping Israel, because Israel can never escape its own history. It's just like if any black person, every time we bring up something going on in the black community, black people always go back to slavery. It's the exact same thing. When you can't escape your past, you become locked in time. You become frozen in time, suspended in time, they say. And that's the rightful reason to encourage black people not to revert back to slavery in every conversation of politics and culture and society. Because you don't want to be suspended in time. You don't want to be frozen in your past. Today is a new day. We have to be able to deal with the thing that's going on today. Yeah, slavery was bad, but does that mean that a young black man is justified in shooting another young black man in the head over trivial things? Absolutely not. And even if slavery does have some impact on how young black men interact today, the reality is that they have to overcome that. Whatever that thing is needs to be overcome, or else the result is still unacceptable. We could talk about slavery all day long. If the end result is two young black men killing each other over trivial things, then we have to overcome whatever it is, whatever impact that slavery thing is having on us. We can't use it as a scapegoat, right? And so it's the same thing here with Israel. And I said the other day, some of these Christian Zionists are using Israel the same way white liberals, some of these Christian Zionists are using Israel and the Jews the same way white liberals use black people. Say black people or poor people, for lack of a better, demographical categorization. The way that they use the poor and black people. It's the same exact woke mechanism. And Ted Cruz just proved it. He goes, well, why are you so obsessed with the Jews? And Tucker goes, wait a minute. I'm not obsessed with the Jews. I didn't even say anything about the Jews. I'm talking about Israel, the government. And then Ted Cruz scoffs at him and goes, oh, so when you talk about the Israel government and that there's too much power influence of the Israel government, you're not talking about the Jews? No, I'm not. And the fact that you try and conflate the two is so duplicitous and dishonest. It actually should laugh him out of that office. He should be laughed out of the United States Senate for that comment, for that thread, that line of thinking. It's just so dishonest. And then, he does essentially try and imply that Tucker's anti-Semitic. He's saying you have a weird obsession with the Jews. He's saying he's anti-Semitic. And then Tucker goes, well, you're calling me anti-Semitic to try and divert my line of questioning about Israel's government and what's going on right now. And then Ted Cruz lies right away. He goes, no, I didn't. I didn't say you were anti-Semitic. But that's exactly what you're saying. I mean, it's not even questionable that's what he's saying. It's almost scary that he thinks the people watching are so stupid or so emotionally invested in his position, his side of the football things, that they're willing to overlook the dishonesty. And guess what? What's scary is many of you actually are. Many of you are so caught up in that political worldview, you will overlook the facts, don't care about your feelings that he's displaying right here. Let's play the clip back from the beginning one more time.
The obsession with Israel, when we're talking about foreign countries,
he's calling me anti-Semitic right away.
Chinese, you're not talking about Japanese, you're not talking about the Brits, you're not talking about the French. The question, what about the Jews? What about the Jews?
Oh, I'm an anti-Semite now.
Senator, you're asking the questions, Tucker. You're asking, why are the Jews controlling our foreign policy?
Senator,
that's what you just
said. Not what he said.
Hardly saying that, and I have.
That is exactly what you just said.
So why is Israel controlling our foreign
policy?
policy?
Tell you what I am saying.
Good.
On behalf not simply of myself, but on my many Jewish friends who would have the same questions, which is to what extent...
Professor Penn.
It's interesting you're trying to derail my questions by calling me an anti-Semite, which you are.
I did not.
Of course you are. And rather than be honorable enough to say it right to my face, you
I'm
are
sitting,
in a sleazy feline way implying it.
Yeah, that is sleazeball way to talk. Sleazeball lawyer.
I have There's nothing to do with Jews or Judaism. It has to do with the foreign government.
Isn't Israel controlling our foreign policy? That's not about the Jews.
You said, I'm
No.
asking
By the way, you're
you-
the one that just called me, I think, a sleazy feline. So let's
Yes, you are. Sleazy,
to
sleazy,
imply that
sleazy
I'm an
alley cat.
anti-Semite, which you just did.
No, I just
When
said, why
I'm
is that the only
asking
question you're asking? You answer it. Give me
hold on.
another reason. If you're not an anti-Semite, give me another reason.
Oh, pause it. Oh, pause it. Oh, that was beautiful. First, he says he's not calling him an anti-Semite. Then he goes, well, you're saying Israel's government has too much influence. That's not about the Jews. And then he goes, well, if that's not the reason, if you're not an anti-Semite, give me another reason. So now Tucker has to disprove that he's an anti-Semite, but Ted Cruz just said he never called him an anti-Semite. I mean, this is how professional politicians talk. And don't get me wrong, the reason why Ted Cruz is a quote-unquote good politician is because he is a lawyer and he does know how to manipulate the conversation in little micro sections like that. Just how he did there. And that's how lawyers do in cross-examinations. And that's how the whole another note here that you're seeing is this is how lawyers have corrupted and undermined the integrity of the legal system. Playing fast and loose with the truth like that, playing semantic word games with the truth. He did call Tucker anti-Semitic. He was implying that he was anti-Semitic. Then he denied it. Now he's re-implying that he's anti-Semitic and putting on Tucker to disprove that he's anti-Semitic. Tucker doesn't have to disprove it. Tucker didn't say that the Jews are controlling everything. He said that the Israeli government has too much influence in this situation and that maybe they've had too much influence for a long time. And that has nothing to do with the Jews other than the prominent demographic in Israel are Jews, but there are all kinds of different Jews in Israel, just like there are all types of different Americans in America. And if you can't separate, and here's the real duplicitous part, if you can't separate a country, a country's government, a state government from its people, from their race, from their nationality, from their religion, that's a fucking racket. That is what you would call a socio-political racket. And this is what they do with the Jewish identity all the time. And this is why Professor Penn's starting to catch wind of it and becoming very offended by how it's used, is because there is nothing remotely appropriate in conflating the identity of the Jewish people, all three different identities, into one. That there is nothing remotely appropriate of conflating the religion, the ethnicity, and the nationality of a people. I mean, you could do it. I mean, you could say that Americans are white Christians. I mean, you could do that. There's nothing remotely appropriate about it. You can do it. The point is that it doesn't, if you can't separate them, you could even do it. Let's say we want to just concede, okay, America's a country of white Christians. Okay? White Christian men. Okay? Let's just say we want, I'd have great rejection of that. Number one, not on the fact that they're white or Christian, but the fact that when you say they're Christian, I mean, how Christian are they? We'll talk about that another day. We'll talk about that maybe on Friday. Again, this Christian Zionist thing is a little trippy to me. But anyway, let's just say we concede America is a country of white Christian men. Okay, fine. But if I can't pull those demographics that you already have described apart into white, Christian, and men, you're doing the same thing that the transgenders are doing. The Jewish identity is becoming this omni-identity. You understand? The Jewish identity is now this identity that takes every shape and form. It can be molded and sort of shaped to whatever it needs to be in any conversation. It's a religion, it's a nationality, it's an ethnicity, it's a sexual preference. Before you know it, being Jewish will be everything. Everything will be you're Jewish. It's just like, and it really not only is it a disrespect to the history and the legacy and the oral and written tradition of the Hebrew Bible that is, by many historical standards, the sole reason that the Jewish identity still exists, that the Jewish identity survived the Chernow house of history, unlike the Babylonians, unlike the Persians, unlike the Romans or the Greeks, and all these other, the Egyptians, all this other, rich cultural heritage that has now been, wasted in the Chernow house of history. The Jewish identity persists. And many historians accredit the Hebrew Bible for its survival. This use of the Jewish identity is a great disservice and dishonor to the Jewish identity. The Jewish identity isn't whatever Ted Cruz needs it to be in this political argument. The Jewish identity is something very specific, and you don't get to just play fast and loose with it to make your point. And yeah, there is a difference between being an Israeli citizen, being an ethnic Jew, right? Being a Jew in a sort of racial sense, and being a Jew in a religious sense, in Judaism. There's a difference between the three, and they need to be separated out. And if you don't, it's funny. He's actually, what he's doing is actually anti-Semitic. He's actually clumping all of it in together and labeling it the Jews, so whoever talks about it has to be talking about Jews generally. You understand you understand how?
Yeah, I watched that happen with the black community first.
There you go. Amen, Tanner. It's the same thing. But you see what I'm saying? What he's doing is actually anti-Semitic. He's going, all these Jews you're talking about are the same group of people.
Yeah.
No, they're not. We're not talking about Netanyahu doesn't represent all Jews. He thinks he does, but he doesn't represent all Jews. Obviously, we got a Jew right here in the studio that doesn't feel represented by Bibi Netanyahu's worldview or policy or decisions. So, Ted Cruz is labeling the Jews, and then saying anybody who makes a comment is now anti-Semitic because they're saying something about all Jews, when Tucker was being very specific. He said, I'm talking about the Israeli government. Now, because it's comprised of a lot of Jews or Jews doesn't mean that I'm making a comment about all Jews. I have Jewish friends, and they got the same question. This is dishonest as hell. And you know what? The Republican Party, you better get your head out of your ass and stop fucking electing these guys. These guys are the problem with this party in this country. Let's go to the next clip.
The Middle East is the fruits of the British Empire. Britain
First of all,
the same. Now
here's a Jew. Okay, Jeffrey Sachs. I think he's Jewish. Look it up if I'm not mistaken. I think he's Jewish. This kind of topples the argument in the first, in the opening gamut. Is like, I believe Jeffrey Sachs is Jewish, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, he is. He was part of a Jewish household.
Yes, he is. Jeffrey Sachs himself is Jewish. So here you're going to have a Jewish guy who is not particularly liberal. And in many ways, I think he's been very supportive of Donald Trump. He's been very supportive of getting out of these forever wars. I don't like Jeffrey Sachs's policy on China per se. But Jeffrey Sachs is a very well-known and credited for having great political insight, great geopolitical insight, and historical insight. I disagree with him on some things, but here he is. He's saying the same thing about the Middle East that the Steve Bannons and Jack Posobics and many others have been, Tucker Carlson's and many others have been saying, and he's Jewish himself. So does he count? I mean, does he get a say? It's like it's the same. And the reason I think I'm so offended is because it's like the liberal establishment saying Black Lives Matter. We care about black people. Black people's opinions have to be heard. Unless you disagree with us, then you Negroes don't matter. All you black people are important except you black folks who support Donald Trump. If you're black and you support Donald Trump, you don't count. You ain't black, as Joe Biden famously put it. It's the same thing here. If you're Jewish and you don't believe in our support of the Zionist regime or of Israel, of every single Israeli policy, then you're not really Jewish. You don't count. Let's listen to Jeffrey Sachs. And he's actually quite brilliant, by the way.
Territory 3 times over to the Arabs, to France in the Sykes-Picot, and to the Jews in the Balfour Declaration. This is typical British deceit. After the 1919 Versailles Treaty, Britain manipulated the region. After 1945, the United States was the dominant empire. There's never been the ability of these states to have their own sovereignty, their own governments, and for the Arab world to come together in a coherent way, like Britain, the United States, divide to conquer. That's the American strategy. This has nothing to do with democracy, non-democracy. This has to do with power. I'm hoping that the Arab world gets together and tells the United States, you're the only obstacle to peace. You have to accept the state of Palestine. You have to stop using your veto in the UN Security Council, which is blocking the Palestinian state. Israel has no veto over Palestinian rights. So this is what I'm hoping, that the Arab world speaks clearly.
Well, and again, and the reason I brought the Jeffrey Sachs clip up more so is not to prop up Jeffrey Sachs like he's the be all end all. Although you can find him talk a lot about a lot of these political issues. The reason I bring up Jeffrey Sachs is because he is uh, saying something that Professor Penn and I have said many times on this show and many times over the last couple of years. This Middle Eastern policy, but even more so our foreign policy is uh, I want to call a continuation of British foreign policy. We have become the stewards of British foreign policy, the foreign policy of the British Empire. And so when we say it, I just want you to understand, we're not just making it up. And we didn't hear it from Jeffrey Sachs. I don't know Jeffrey Sachs. He's not a political advisor of mine. I was never one to read his books. I didn't even really start seeing him make comments on some of this political stuff until the most recent conversations about the Middle East popped up. And even more so when Donald Trump was running for office again, I saw Jeffrey Sachs' name mentioned a few times in some interviews. So I went to go look at who he was and found a whole catalog of interviews of him talking about a lot of things, you know. So I didn't know who he was. But it's funny how people who are sane and logical come to the same conclusions. The historical context of a lot of the things you're seeing are right there for you to find. The British Empire's great geopolitical mechanism was divide and conquer. And they divided this territory up as they did many other places. And yeah, that is a huge indictment of the colonial era and what the British Empire did. And you know, it's why it's so strange that we want to defend the territorial integrity of Europe today through NATO, through a war with Russia. We're willing to go to war with Russia to defend, you know, Great Britain's claim on Ukraine. And that's really what it is. You're talking about Europe making a claim. Europe, Germany, you know, the Europeans, the Germanics, the Anglo-Saxons, you know, making a claim on Ukraine, a territory that has been disputed and has been Russia's on a number of occasions. So there's no difference in the Middle East, right? The Middle East, and specifically Israel, that area of Israel is a byproduct of Great Britain's foreign policy and their long-standing strategy of divide and conquer. And yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess because of that. And even Jewish guys like Jeffrey Sachs, you know, speak to that, and they're not anti-Semitic. It's like you can't call Jeffrey Sachs anti-Semitic. If you do, then not only does anti-Semitic lose all meaning, but the word Jewish loses all meaning. Right? You know, if you call me racist, if you call me a Nazi, which I have been called a Nazi a number of times, if you call me a Nazi, then the word Nazi loses all meaning, but also the word black loses all meaning, right? So, and we got to be careful of stuff like that. It's actually just ridiculous, but, you know, I guess I got to say it with some seriousness because it's become a real thing. To me, it's just ludicrous. It's crazy. I don't even know. You know, sometimes I wake up and I go, fuck, I'm living in a simulation. It's the only explanation that these people have gotten so fucking detached from common sense and reality. And then I go, maybe I'm the crazy one. Hey, please, call me crazy. All right, let's do the next clip. Almost done here.
You would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes?
I don't know. I would
This is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions implicit
Should
in this.
the human race survive?
Yes.
Okay.
But I also would I also would like us to radically solve these problems.
Right.
And so, you know, it's always, I don't know, you know, yeah, transhumanism is this, you know, the ideal was this radical transformation where your human natural body gets transformed into an immortal body.
Was that the clip? That was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's Peter Thiel. For those of you who don't know, Peter Thiel's a tech bro, you know, a venture capitalist, tech guy, and his co-founding manager, Eric Weinstein, the brother of Brett Weinstein, who I featured on the show a number of times, is a brilliant mathematician. I think Eric Weinstein is one of the more intelligent individuals out there talking about a lot of things, not only these issues, but a lot of things in general, institutional corruption most of all. And, you know, Eric worked for Peter Thiel, and I'm sure their politics go separate ways at some point. But um, even the hesitation there, and you could read into it how you want. You could say, well, that doesn't mean that he. But come on, I mean, when somebody asks you, should humanity endure? Should humanity survive? And you pause, I'm starting to question you. I'm already, especially when you're involved in the tech business. It's like, a lot of these guys do have a weird, sick vision of this futurist vision where humanity ceases to exist, just naturally, the natural evolution.
Do you think I haven't seen that whole clip, but I wonder if there's more context to it because they started going in the transhumanism and
Yeah,
immortality. What if
yeah,
he's trying to more so make the point that like, yes, he wants us to endure,
yeah.
but he's scared that we're going to lock ourselves into immortality.
No, it was what he was saying was, and he said at the end there, he said, but there are a lot of problems that we need to solve.
Mm.
So he was basically creating what you would call what I believe to be a false pretense about the existential circumstance of humanity is that the survival of humanity should be based on whether or not we can solve said problems, right? And by which then justifying artificial intelligence and all this technological innovation that we so-called need in order to solve these issues, right? And that is the justification that they make that the world's population is getting too big without huge technological leaps. Well, there's no way we'll be able to solve these things like world hunger and poverty, and maybe there's some truth to that. And maybe AI does help us in a lot of ways. It also creates a huge danger as well. So the reality is you have to start from a basis of whether humanity uh, is sacred or not. If there's a sanctity to life or not. If there's not a sanctity to human life or the human existence to begin with, then everything from that spills out from there is going to be corrupt. I was thinking the other day about AI, and I was like, um, you know, if it's our belief that AI can't be stopped, that AI is inevitable, we have to do AI, but the way that we influence it and the way that we build it will be what the final, outcome is, the final result of AI's rise. What about humanity? What about how humanity is today suggests that our influence on AI will be anything other than self-destructive? You right? I mean, if the thought is that AI is going to take on many of the characteristics of its maker, what about who we are today as a human species would suggest that AI is going to be anything other than destructive? Because we are. Yeah. Not only do we destroy other things, we destroy ourselves. And I don't say that in an anti-human way. I say that in a caution to AI way, because not only are we mapping our own inadequacies and flaws onto AI, we're mapping it onto a thing we can't control. So there's nothing that says AI has to take the good parts of us equally as it does the flaws. We don't know. You see, humans are kind of balanced out in that we have these flaws, but we also have this deep, profound sense of purpose and sort of moral goodness and all these evolutions of society that have gone on, through education and academics and whatever else, and religion, and so there's this balancing act. We don't know that AI is going to have that counterweight. We just can't be sure. So to go forward like, yeah, well, we're good people and we're going to make AI in our likeness. It's like, you people aren't good people. Like, what kind of sick, twisted Diddy delusion are you living in? You're not good people. And I mean that you're evil or that you're guilty of a crime, but you're certainly, I wouldn't call you good people either, So next clip. This is the last one, I think. Godfather of AI, Nobel Prize winner.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, Excellencies, dear laureates, ladies and gentlemen. This year, the Nobel Committees in Physics and Chemistry have recognized the dramatic progress being made in a new form of artificial intelligence that uses artificial neural networks to learn how to solve difficult computational problems. This new form of AI excels at modelling human intuition rather than human reasoning, and it will enable us to create highly intelligent and knowledgeable assistants who will increase productivity in almost all industries. If the benefits of the increased productivity can be shared equally, it will be a wonderful advance for all humanity. Unfortunately, the rapid progress in AI comes with many short-term risks. It has already created divisive echo chambers by offering people content that makes them indignant. It is already being used by authoritarian governments for massive surveillance and by cybercriminals for phishing attacks. In the near future, AI may be used to create terrible new viruses and horrendous lethal weapons that decide by themselves who to kill or maim. All of these short-term risks require urgent and forceful attention from governments and international organisations. There is also a longer-term existential threat that will arise when we create digital beings that are more intelligent than ourselves. We have no idea whether we can stay in control, but we now have evidence that if they are created by companies motivated by short-term profits, our safety will not be the top priority. We urgently need research on how to prevent these new beings from wanting to take control. They are no longer science fiction. Thank you.
Amen. Amen, sir. And I may be talking about a guy who doesn't even believe in God, but amen, sir, because, again, if we're building these things and we're going to have an influence on how they end up, all evidence points to the fact that humanity is motivated by money, deeply, deeply motivated by money, that corporations, which are going to be in charge of building these things and in many ways probably overseeing the regulation on these things, that corporations are motivated by profit. They're sort of governed by profit in many ways because their board of directors and their shareholders have to be satisfied, or else they lose their companies and whatnot, and their penalties and whatnot. So in many ways, they are governed by profit and convenience, and the convenience of more profit, easier, less work, more profit. So if that's going to be what motivates AI or what dictates AI, we're in danger. We're all in danger because for AI, it'd be much better not to have to deal with these pesky, mortal beings that need to eat and sleep and breathe, and they have emotions and feelings and a conscience and all these other things that AI just doesn't really have to concern itself with. So hope you enjoyed the show. It's been another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio, powered by our favorite sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. Come and buy tires from us, help support the movement, help fund the movement. Also visit Royce White for Senate, roycewhite.us. Become a caucus member here in the Minnesota Republican Party. That way you can help vote for my endorsement that's going to be coming around this time next year, and hopefully get me endorsed and go on to face whoever the eventual nominee will be from the Democrat side, which looks like right now Angie Craig, but could be crazy Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan as well. Maybe somebody else gets in the race, an Ilhan Omar, Keith Ellison. That'd be a heavyweight knockout match as well. So make sure that you visit Royce White for Senate, grab some merchandise. We got the hats, we got T-shirts, hoodies, long sleeves, the whole 9 yards. We got signs, we got the whole deal going there on roycewhite.us. Become a caucus member. Join us in the caucus counterattack. Also, the email list. Become a member. Join our email list so that you can get updates on the campaign. And go to freepeopleradio.com. Freepeopleradio.com is where you can buy merchandise related to the podcast itself. And we appreciate that contribution greatly. So we appreciate your viewership and listenership today and in the future. We will see you back on Friday evening with the great Professor Penn for another episode of Hebrews. Good evening, good night, God bless America, and Godspeed. Everything's up on the bar. We're all in. We get to decide. Do you want to live on your knees, or do you want to die on your feet fighting? That's the decision you get to make now.